There's so many difficult questions in life. Am I looking fat? Should I just eat one more? And to some, what is the purpose of life? Don't worry, I'm not announcing the commencement of a philosophy class. I'm only asking some difficult questions. Questions that generations before us have struggled to answer, and presumably generations after us would continue to. Only a handful of people all over the world and in time got to know the answers. And strangely enough, as I was told by a wise man, those who know would not tell the answers, and those who tell apparently do not know. It is this continuous quest that keeps us all going. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mohit Batra, and I'm a third generation bookseller running an independent bookstore called Rajat Book Corner. I also head an initiative called A Book is the Smartest Handheld Device. Some of you have allowed me to share my craziness enough and more times. But for those who have joined for the first time under this initiative, we gather people over meaningful conversations, and books happen to be our favorite resource to help us do that. We have hosted numerous author interactions in the past few years. We have hosted authors at the bookstore, at libraries, at magnificent monuments like Hawa Mahal, Jantar Mantar, at luxury hotels. And now, when COVID brought the entire world to a standstill, we luckily opened another door and ventured out of Jaipur. I'm so happy that our format through our website, www.rajatbookcorner.com, has now enabled me to do such conversations all over the country. In fact, our author today, Deepak, is currently based in US. My co-host Praveen is based in Hyderabad, and all of us have got together in such a unique way. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. I welcome you all to this evening of hopeful and meaningful conversation. We are going to indulge Deepak into a panel discussion for about 20 minutes and thereafter open it to everyone to participate. Please remember, if you come here only to listen, trust me, YouTube is a better option. Having said that, once we open the conversations, if you have anything to say, you can click on raise your hand icon. It's there on the reactions button on your screen, and we shall put the spotlight on you to hear your views on the subject of discussion. And while the discussion is on, you may also put your thoughts in the chat box. I now invite Praveen, who not only offered his love and support, but has given wings to my dreams. Not the wings of a falcon or an eagle, or dare I say, neither that of a bird, but those of a butterfly. Praveen has his own unique story to share and is one of the most creative persons I know. Praveen, if you could please take it from here and introduce yourself and of course stories by Miraki.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mohit. It's a great journey I have in the last 1 year with you. I must mention that. My journey with books, my journey with deep questions has been there for the last couple of years. I'm not so lucky as Deepak, who started this journey at the age of 17. Having said that, a lot of people have asked me what is Miraki. The brand Miraki, it comes from the Greek word which means to do something with soul and passion, to put everything of one's life into it. The butterfly is a reminder of the path of transformation from being caterpillar to butterfly. Only when you submit yourself to the unknown future, you transform yourself to a beautiful newness. And that's what I have found in the last couple of years. The four colors that makes up the butterfly's wing, that is my brand Miraki, are inspired by the colors that my children have brought into my life. The sole purpose, what is the sole purpose of Miraki? The sole purpose of Miraki is give life to a living. And this, I'm very happy that my better half, or I'll say the much better half, my wife, Tripti, has coined this tagline for me. The mission statement of Miraki, before I say that, it's very important to tell that I'm not into this entire vertical of doing activities and all. But for the last couple of years, I was truly searching for what my life purpose is. So I was seeing a disconnect between my work and my life. And I think that if you go to office, spend about 8 hours at office, and then you come back home, and there was a clear cut demarcation of your life and work. I said, that is not what is happening for me. I need to blend this thing in one entity. For that scope, I started Miraki, and I'm very happy to say that I have made some great insight into blending my life and work on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So the mission statement for Miraki is very simple. We are an ecosystem of limitless possibilities of life, changing experiences that are designed to connect you with your best selves. An experiential space where creativity finds its expression along with an inspired audience, just like what we have today. Guys, without much ado, I would like to invite and thank Deepak Ramola for accepting our invitation to talk to the audience today. As you all know, Deepak in the US, it's about 5:30 in the morning, and a very good morning to Deepak. Now, who is
Thank
Deepak? Hey, hi. Very short description about who is Deepak, and then we give this platform to the one and only. Deepak Ramola is the founder and artistic director of Project Fuel, an organization that documents and designs human wisdom. He has worked with the women of Maasai tribe to the young girls in Afghanistan and to the sex workers of Kamatipura, learning from earthquake survivors in Nepal to Syrian refugees in Europe and migration affected villages of Uttarakhand, India. Now, who is Deepak? I'm sure you'll get to know more about it, but what is Deepak? Very interesting. This book, I'm sure many of you must have seen, read, and got this book. He has given me the 50 toughest questions of life. And I was going through that. I have completed 40 questions, 10 more to go. So, last 3, 4 days, I've been thinking what question I have to ask him. So, I'm still scouting for a question what I can ask Deepak. And that is what Deepak has made to us. What is Deepak? I'm still clueless about it. He has covered the world with his curated 50 handpicked questions. And I'm very happy that he has asked the right questions. I'm looking forward to probably evaluate these questions along with all of you. Over to Deepak. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you so much, Praveen and Mohit. And hi, everybody. Nothing says I am very excited about this session than waking up at 4:30 and getting ready for a 5:30 a.m. session. The journey of this book has been as interesting as meeting you today. I haven't written because I felt that now, was a time to ask questions, but more so because I think so many of us have answers that we don't know what question they're answering. And putting a question to them allows us to be able to better define. In fact, there's a quote that one of the readers of the book sent me, and I thought it summarized the book well. It's a quote by David Copperrider who said, "We live in a world our questions create." And I thought, what are the questions that we are allowing ourselves to create? Even in any given situation, if you're having a bad time, if you're having a troubled time, a challenging time, which I think each one of us has had during the pandemic, and you ask, why is this happening to me? Your answer will be of that, of, being in an excruciating, in a poignant situation. But if you ask and switch the question and say, what is this here to teach me? You'll feel empowered with the understanding of the situation you're in. So the kind of question you ask is the kind of emotion you will go through. And I'm so glad that so many people are finding resonance with this book. And as Mohit, Praveen, and I talk further about the process, about the journey of the book, and answers that many of you will give, I hope you can offer us your wisdom that you might have felt over the years.
Well, thank you, Deepak. We're delighted to have this conversation with you, and thank you, everybody. You, to begin with, you have, beautifully coined this phrase, which I heard, of course, when I came in touch with you. Forward the understanding of every life lesson.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey,
Um,
how this came about.
Yes. My mother was pulled out of school, as many of you might have read in the last chapter of the book. My mother was pulled out of school in grade 5 by her grandmother, who didn't want her to study with boys or study at all. Um, Many of you know in 1960s 70s एक धारणा थी स्पेशली छोटे गांव में कि लड़कियों को नहीं पढ़ाना चाहिए, and my mother, being the eldest the daughter of the house, was pulled out. But I never believed growing up when my mother would tell me, अच्छे से पढ़ो क्योंकि मैं नहीं पढ़ पाई, मेरे पास resources नहीं थे. I thought it's one of those reality show stories, right? Like you kind of do the emotional build up so that people perform well. And my mother said to me at age 14 that the truth is that I didn't go to school, but life has been my classroom, and I have been learning from everything that life is teaching me. I thought, well, if she's learning simply by living, that means everyone who's living is learning something. And where can I find that information? Surprisingly, I went to the master of all answers, Google and I type grandmother's life lesson. I type best friend's life lesson. I typed the life lesson for my crush, and nothing showed up in school. And I was so disappointed that you either had to be rich or famous to have a legacy, to create an impact beyond your family, your community, and your workspace. And that didn't settle well for me. I started collecting life lessons, primarily for my own self. And I must confess, I thought that if I have enough life lessons by the time I'm 18, I will be the first person in human history to commit no mistakes. Because if I will know so much about everything, I will probably not do any mistakes. I mean, you can tell my level of wisdom back then. But when I got to 18, I realized that the fun part about learning from other people's experiences, good or bad, was not that you don't commit any mistakes, is that you don't commit the same set of mistakes that a million people have done before you. Like going to see a movie and knowing what happens in the end. All the life lessons and all the experiences that I had lived through other people's experiences, gave me the chance to switch the plot. So if you see any work that I have done, whether it's being a life skills educator at 17, it's being a lyrics writer at 20, it's being a kindness ambassador at 25, working with the UN at 22, all of those things are situations that I don't know somebody else in who has been able to configure what comes out of it. So I thought, well, if I be one of those people, maybe I'll be able to discover something new and better. I have painted villages with my team, and now this book. So yeah, I think in many ways, to answer your question, Mohit, this journey has been rooted in the forwarding of every life lesson and the understanding of every life lesson, as my mother taught me that you can learn from life. And also, of those of you who are listening today, I would like to tell you, I'm sure you know people who haven't have had a chance to pursue MBA, and we give so much importance to MBA these days. I was teaching MBAs in Paris 3 years ago, or even in Noida, and I had a very subliminal moment because I asked my class to write a love letter. And the students in the class said, one of the students in the class said, "Can I do an executive summary instead?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Oh, it comes more naturally to us." I was so disappointed that we are going forward to live in a world where our courses and the vocabulary of our curriculums dictate the lives we live and have become our languages. So I'm very scared that in a few years, we will live in a world where people will call dating as test marketing, will call family reunions small team based organizations, and will call their own children value added deliverables, because that's what we are learning. And if we don't want to get into that direction, we have to stop and ask tough questions so that the answers can illuminate on what we want to create for ourselves. That is, I mean, Praveen and Mohit, does that make sense? Does it resonate with you too?
Right. So, taking this further question from you, what you just said, I mean, I find it so difficult that I don't find an ecosystem around me which talks about this kind of hard questions. All right. And I've been struggling to make an ecosystem of myself of like minded people. Not that I don't have great friends who talk so deep about it, but they don't have time to talk so deep about life and tougher questions.
Yeah.
What are they? Why are they so busy? Is a question I anyways ask. But how difficult it is, Deepak, to create this kind of ecosystem, what you have created for yourself, but for people like us who are not into that genre of having that kind of, I would say, choices in life. How
Wow.
do we build this kind of ecosystem?
See, that's the interesting part. I think the ecosystem exists by default. We don't leverage it to our advantage because we are so conscious. Like when I was 17 and I was teaching life lessons and human wisdom, I cannot tell you I didn't have friends because people were like, how can you be 17 and be so deep? And I don't understand that question. What has depth to do with age? What has wisdom to do with having a number associated? A lot of my friends or acquaintances and now people on the internet write to me saying, Deepak, I don't know my life lesson because when I am 45, I will know it. First of all, I mean, I have many follow-up questions. Who has guaranteed you're going to live till 45? Not to be pessimistic here, but no day is promised. So if you can sign an agreement and tell me you're going to be safe and healthy till 45, I'm willing to wait. Second of all, uh, you know exactly what you know at the age you are. I teach life lessons across the world, and some of my most favorite life lessons have come in from kids as young as 5. A 5-year-old girl in Mother Teresa's NGO Asha Dan in Mumbai years ago told me, when I asked her, "What's your life lesson?" She said, "When you're done using a jar, remember to close a lid." A 6-year-old boy in Belgium, last to last year, told me, his name is Abdul Rahman, and he said, "My life lesson, Deepak, is before you learn how to ride a bike, learn where the brakes are." Now, I don't even know some 80-year-olds who know that you need to define boundaries. I have met the oldest person I think I ever interviewed and worked with was 108. And there have been people who have been 90 plus, and I have sat across them and thought to myself, really, that's what you learned at 90? So full of ignorance and hate and religious bias that I thought, wow, it's 90 years of pent up energy that needs to be spent somewhere. So I think age is a myth when it comes to wisdom. I think Oscar Wilde said it best. He said, uh, wisdom comes with age, but sometimes or many times only comes age. And so when you discount in people that they don't know better, that they will know better when they get to a particular job, position, a privilege, power, that is when that ecosystem is being, I think, made to feel inferior. I was with a woman. I was just telling Apurva, who I'm staying with, my sister here, and I was telling her that one of the first moments in my life that deeply impacted me was a conversation with a woman जो सड़क के किनारे पत्थर तोड़ रही थी उत्तराखंड में. There was a long jam, and I mean, I'm a very creepy guy. If I am left to my own devices and I have time, I would like to have a conversation with people. So if you sit next to me on an airplane, you'll not be bored. I'll make sure that I ask you things and I tell you things from my experiences. And so we were stuck in a long jam, highway ban raha tha, and I got off the car and this woman was breaking this big stone for that road side bajri, and I sat with her and I had a conversation and I said, what do you really want in life? I think she was 27, married at 21, and she said, I have 2 daughters and I would like for my daughters to do well. And I said, that's for the daughters. What do you want for yourself? And she said, same, my husband should be healthy and all of that. I said, what do you want for yourself? And you know what she said? She said, if I can really be honest with you, मुझे एक चॉकलेट पूरी खानी है क्योंकि मैंने कभी जिंदगी में एक पूरी चॉकलेट का बार शुरू के पीस से लेके एंड के पीस तक खुद नहीं खाया. And I was so amazed that there are people in the world whose aspiration is to eat a chocolate bar. So I told her, I'll buy you one. And she said, वही फर्क है, अपने पैसे से खाना है. So I said, you must be making enough to buy a chocolate. And she said, yes, but I always have to share it. And if I eat it by myself, I'm going to live in the guilt. So I want to get emotionally and internally to a point where I'm not guilty of eating a whole chocolate bar by myself and enjoy it. So I would say the ecosystem is that woman who's breaking the stone by a mountainside. The ecosystem is your bus driver. The ecosystem is your family. How many people sit at dinner table and have asked or know what their parents' life lesson is? Somebody 3 weeks ago on the pretext of the book sent me something very interesting. They said, my father is, in his last stage of life. And I read your book and I realized I don't know what his life lesson is. And I have seen this man for the last 53 years of my life. So I think it starts a conversation even right at the dinner table. And if you're willing to have that courage, you might be able to discover more about your ecosystem. And, as Mohit could tell you, curating so many books and experiences with people, uh, Mohit, won't you say that ecosystem exists? People who still go to the self-help section, people who still probably want to pick 3 copies of a book when they come in to buy one.
Rather than books, I would say I've never felt guilty of eating not one but numerous chocolates all by myself. So yes, that ecosystem does exist. But what a beautiful insight, Deepak. I'm so happy to listen to you. I mean, we could sit here all day and just keep on listening to you.
Thank you. So many things didn't make it to the book. Like I
I'm
literally had the construct of 50 questions. I wish I could do 120. And for the benefit of everyone who's watching and listening right now, I must tell I started with 3,000 questions. So if you think 50 questions are tough, I wish you could have an access to 3,000. You would be crying with me because on many days I was like, I don't know how to write this book and do another question, which is not tough.
So taking your, you mentioned about the emotional involvement, the example that you shared with this lady who was breaking stones on the highway. Personally, how do you create that emotional detachment when you've involved yourself with so many stories? Moving yourself, getting involved, and the way intensely and passionately you've got yourself involved with so many people. And at the outset, I can comfortably, rather, everybody can comfortably see you yourself are a very emotional person. So how do you, detach yourself from all of that and move on to the next story?
Wow. I think you never fully detach yourself, Mohit, because if you have given the honor and the respect of absorbing another human being's story and celebrating it, I think a part of it remains with you. As I'm talking at 5:30 in the morning about that woman, I'm suddenly reminded of things I'm grateful for in my life. I think what you come to learn is how to use it so that it fuels you, it charges you to better things rather than diminishes your light and makes you feel, oh my god, the world is a hopeless place. I was working with Syrian refugees in 2016 and I lived for 90 days in refugee camps of Europe, from Sweden, Netherlands, Germany, France, and Hungary. And I saw humanity uh, just at the absolute excruciating point. These were people who had left their homes, language, love, people, country, everything. And I think in many ways, it became more detrimental for me to understand that people, um, when they become vulnerable, they're also powerful. And we don't really see that happen because self love is not a priority, that we don't put ourselves into the forefront. The few things I've tried, I must tell you, it's a journey. When I started at 17, teaching at 17, you would tell me an emotional story and I would cry more than you would cry. And I was a mess and I couldn't ask the next question better. And I thought it was a disservice to the person I was listening to that my emotions overrode their emotions. And so I promise myself till today, on every research project that I go to, that I get a chance to cry once in a day. And that has to be back at my hotel room or my Airbnb. It never can be in front of the person because I have to give their emotions the spotlight. If the person has to stop telling the story and console me, then I don't know if I'm ready to hear that story. And in many ways, I think the detachment is happens. Actually, it's not a detachment, as I said, it is morphing of that energy into something else. I'm never looking to say, oh my god, I've heard this and I need to let it go. I always ask myself, I now know this, what can I do with the awareness of this? So when I was listening to women from ghost villages of Uttarakhand, last few families remaining in a village that had over 300 families, and two families are remaining and they're the only families in that village. Imagine waking up to an empty ghost town. When I heard that, I could have been, I mean, I was sad that a sense of community was deteriorating, but I said, what can I do? What can I really do to assist this? And I gathered a team and I painted world's first village of life lessons in Sod, Uttarakhand, adopted another village in 2018. So I don't let my energy of an emotion get stuck there. And the other thing is passing it on. The moment I told you about the woman who wanted chocolate, I think I have added in energy medicine value of that story to your life. And maybe it will remain and serve you when you are eating a piece of chocolate and you remind yourself you are privileged even with the piece of chocolate. So I think we live in this world where we are expected to break ties and go on to the next thing. Even with people, when you're hurt, moving on or letting go are two different things. You have to ask yourself in every situation, do I want to let go of this or do I want to move on? And once you've answered that, you will have to gather enough resources and decisions to live the juice out of that letting go or that moving on. And I think in many situations, I don't let go. I move on with whatever I have felt. And that makes me feel amazing. Like even when people, hurt you, you think, okay, I have not spoken to this person for a year. I am done and finished. Or when I forgive somebody, I am finished. It's not that I'm going to come to your house and now eat meals with you if I had an argument with you. It comes more from a place that I am willing to protect my own self and then use what you have given me to my advantage and not be reduced by it.
Wonderful. Mohit, I'll take a question which is, I mean, after you told me the story of this woman who was breaking the stone, I wanted to ask you, like, why is it so difficult and why is it considered a sin when we start thinking of ourselves? Like in my situation as well, so many times when I was doing things which I'm passionate about or I love to do it, I feel guilty of doing it because I am in a constant reminder that the other person who is along with me may not like me doing it, and that conscious feeling sometimes troubles us not to take that decision what could be right for myself. So why is it so difficult?
Oh, wow. I cannot. I think I will have to literally take 7 more lives to champion the cause of self love. We live in a world that is so guilty of putting themselves first. I was speaking to a friend who's a massive content creator last night, and she started crying. I asked her a question: what is the long lesson that took you the longest to learn? And she said that I can put myself first. And she started crying because she said it is so difficult to do that. In fact, she used the metaphor of a cup. She said, I was pouring so much from my cup to other people's cup that I ran over like of things in the cup. And as the Bible phrase, I think, goes, my cup runneth over. People don't understand what is in the cup is for you. What is spilling over is for everybody else. But we live in this dichotomy that we have to please more people. We have to make sure everybody likes us. We have, I was a big people pleaser. I had no friends till grade 11th, and now I joke that I have so many. I must host a reality show every 31st December and eliminate some and tell who made it to the next year. I have come to understand for my own self, Praveen, that uh, self love is the least you can settle with. I was bullied when I was growing up. Many of the chapters in the book talk about that experience, that I was not accepted for my voice, didn't have friends, was made to feel reduced because I came from a middle class family and I had kids who were children of generals and colonels in the army. And so it took me a long time to own my story and like myself. And I often remember the African phrase that says, be cautious when a naked person offers you a shirt. And over the years, since I've been teaching for 11 years, people come to me all the time and they're like, Deepak, we love you. We love what you do, but we hate ourselves. And I'm like, wait. You cannot give to somebody what you don't have enough for yourself. And that's why the African phrase, be cautious when a naked man offers you a shirt. If he had something, he would cover himself first. Why would he give it to you? And there is no grace, there is no I would say, Hindi ka shabd hai mahanta, in not serving yourself and serving somebody else first. I think people who really love you will find joy in your happiness, and that's why it's okay to start being self-full and then get to the part where you're selfless. And I really hope nobody gets to a place where you are selfless. The world is already critiquing you. आप कुछ भी काम करें, even if I say the sun rises from the east, there will be 3 people who raise their hands and say it's a conspiracy theory. So I might as well root for myself in any room. I have been, I think, even till last week, I've been in conversations where people will say, oh my God, but don't you think you're too young to write this book? A journalist from a very reputed newspaper during the book session promotion asked me, I only have one question for you, Deepak. um, do you think you're doing too much? You're teaching, you're writing songs, you're writing poetry, you're writing a book called 50 Toughest Question, you're teaching around the world. And I said, to her, two things. I said, if you can guarantee that tomorrow or for the next 50 years, I'm going to be safe and sound, I will stop or I will pause. And the second thing is, if you sign up for the greatest adventure, which is death, right? Like we all know we're going to die. We don't know how, we don't know when. It is the most mysterious of circumstances. And I'm sorry if it's sounding spiritually philosophical, but I'm saying it from a very scientific perspective. Uh, and if that is going to happen to you, any adventure under it seems manageable. I ask myself, I already signed up for the biggest boo-ha-ha of them all. Can writing a book on 50 questions be that difficult? Maybe it'll take 4 more years and anticipate it. So I would say that in part that stems with this understanding that you have to really love yourself. For example, people say, ek kaam karo, achhe se karo. That's a great thing when you're in the moment. But that's what you do all your life and you are discontented, then that really means you have to do more things. It's one life. So I say, if you want to be a jack of all trades and you love being Jack, nobody can make you feel bad about it. I am Jack. I am not a master of one. And I enjoy that tremendously. And I use my songs when I go to teach in a classroom. I don't start in Nepal. I remember in 2015 after the earthquake. You can't go into a class and tell young children who've lost their parents and their homes, guys, I'm here to teach you human wisdom. They will not care about you. So you take your songs and you say, guys, I'm a lyrics writer from Hindi cinema and I have learned a folk song called Vari Jamuna. And the song goes, Vari Jamuna, Jamuna ko bhedai ma manokamna. And you sing it over and over, and the children will say, that's not the melody, you're singing it wrong, this lyrics is, off. And you build a relationship with people with music. So everything I do, I think it's part of my constellation, and I'm not trying to let one star shine more than the other.
Totally, I resonate with the phase what you are going through. It's only thing that I have gone very late in this realization, but very happy about this thing. But also would like to just give a phrase which I and my friends used to talk a lot about when we were in school days. I mean, George Eliot has said that I not only to be loved, but to be told that I'm loved. People don't express love. I mean, a lot of time we have seen that there must be
Yes.
a feeling, but yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. No, I
So,
was just,
so
I
why
was so carried
why
away
is
with
it?
what you were saying. I was nodding in
I really
sound.
fail to understand why people fail to express their feelings in whichever form it is. Even you're writing a letter or sending a postcard or just saying, "Guy, I love you." I mean, it's so difficult. It's so difficult. The feeling is there, but the expression some way it gets not coming out. So why is it so?
Oh, wow. Mm, thinking as to, there are many reasons, definitely. I think one is that we've been far too long rewarded for being the strong one. If you're emotional, you're looked down as a weak person. आप किसी को कह दें कि, oh, if you're a man and you tell somebody, I really love that shawl, it's almost a thing of, my God, like, do you observe other people's shawls and shoes? I've been in room where that has happened. Like somebody has complimented, and people are like, does a man notice that? What does that mean? Or if you're a woman and you're doing, for example, Apurva, my sister, uh, she is she produced the wonderful show Delhi Crime on Netflix, and she also became a mother in 2020. And people had this expectation that now she has to give up her producer career because now she's a mother, and to be a better mother you have to leave one thing, right? Like if you don't sacrifice, what will happen? And I think she's raising a wonderful daughter. She is doing more shows on platforms than any other person. They just won an Emmy for Delhi Crime. I think you all dictate and we all dictate what we want the label to mean us. And many people are very afraid of looking emotional, looking silly, or thinking, why should I say this? Like, doesn't the person already know it's a beautiful shawl? Yes, the person knows it. They don't know it in your voice. So drop your ego or drop your fear and let them know that they look beautiful. There's a quote by, I think, John Goddins in a play written in 1950 called The Curious Savage. And the statement is, people say, I love you all the time. When they say, take an umbrella, it's raining. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Let me do that for you. Let me drop you home. Hey, are you hungry? Should I reheat the food? Watch yourself. It's getting dark out there. Or when they say, even when they say, are you hungry? People say, I love you all the time. We just have to listen to it, my dear, as John Gordon says. And that's the other side of the coin, Praveen. We are loved, but not in always the language we expect to hear it in. If you tell me, oh my God, Deepak, I love you, and you can say it 800 times on this call and say, I love your book, the fact that you organized this and you showed up makes me feel loved enough. So I don't have to hear it in exact terms, but I have to also understand the 100 ways to say I love you that people say it. So if you feel that you are not being loved enough, the first question is, are you waiting for people to say it in your language versus hearing it in a language they are comfortable in? Even after that, if you are still hungry for love, make it apparent. I call up my friends, and I tell them, I think, I've been, I think, giving talk to like 5,000 people, and I've called my friends and said, tell me why I'm amazing. And they're like, weren't you supposed to give a talk? I said, yeah, I'm backstage. And they're like, why do you need to hear it? 5,000 will people clap? Like my best friend will always be like, 5,000 people will clap you and you will know you are loved. I said, no, I need to know it from you. And like he or she would say in that situation, oh my God, you're so greedy. But let me just tell you, you are a really good speaker and I really love you and you're going to be fine. And you have so many stories. And I think there is no shame in asking for it. uh, you know when we are children, the only way we express is we cry when we poop, when we are hungry, when we are cranky to go to sleep. I think as adults we have to cry for that affection and not literally cry, but cry in interesting ways, because now we have the gift of language and we have the gift of sound and we have the gift of resources. So if you let people know that, please tell me how the shawl is looking, or please tell me how my new hairstyle is, there is no shame. And if you think there is shame, then you're not with the right set of people. You have to be able to pick the people who will still, call you names, but tell you how you need to feel, good about yourself. So I think this world we live in, uh, again, an African thing that comes to my mind is that people peck. There's a phrase Maya Angelou, the great African American author, used to say: "Don't let people peck you to death. People will come to you." And the Africans say that they'll come to you, and what they'll do is they'll say, Deepak, I don't like how your accent sounds. And they'll go. What they've taken from you is your confidence of communication. The next time somebody will come around and say, oh my God, you've gained so much weight since I last saw you. And they take away your sense of body image from you. So because they don't have the power to come at you and kill you at once and say, you know what, Gaurav or XYZ or Geeta, I hate you and I don't want to see you ever in the world and I'm going to kill you. Nobody has the power to do that. So they come to you and they take small pieces of your self confidence and chip it away. And our entire fight, I think so far, what I've learned for myself is to protect ourselves from people who peck you to death. And the only alternative to that is to let people who will make you feel loved protect you and ask for it.
Very nice.
Deepak, are you sure you are in US right now and it's 5 a.m.?
I know, I feel
I'm
so excited.
amazed at 5 a.m. in the morning.
I am amazed at my own self. This is the time I write. And if I'm
Wow.
talking so much, I must tell you I'm enjoying this deeply because this is my thinking time. I don't talk generally so early in the morning.
Wonderful. We are so glad we caught you at the right time then. So, we've already crossed 45 minutes, and I'm sure none of us have realized that yet. So
Oh,
beautiful
wow.
listening to you. So, Deepak, I think, Praveen, we should open up the questions. There's somebody called
Sure.
Avinav Luthra who has a question here. So, if we could unmute Avinav, I'll just do that. And before Avinav comes on screen, Deepak, can you tell us a story?
Yeah.
Any story? You're in the creative flow right now.
Okay. Um, there is a story I read which I don't think so it has left me. And the story is that um, the great philosopher Zusya was on his deathbed, and his students gathered around him. It's a short story, and the students gathered around him and said, "Master, what do you fear most about dying?" And the master, in his absolute broken voice, in his last moment, said, "I really am scared of what they will ask me in in heaven or in hell." And he said, the students say, "What question is that?" And he said, "The question is, they will ask me, Zusya, why?" They will not ask me, "Why were you not like Moses? Why were you not like Nicholas? Why were you not like Zuman?" They will ask me, "Zusya, why weren't you you?" And I thought that story is so powerful because, and then of course in the story he comes to explain to his students that they will ask me, "You were given one life and you spent it on so many other people's lives that you forgot to live for your own self." And Zusya, why weren't you you also means, why weren't you able to accept the way you were made? Why did you have to fight it so hard? So I love that story and I love that question because it's a perspective, right? And I think the world we live in, people think solutions are formulas. No, solutions are perspectives. My book is one form of that perspective. Your bookstore is one form of that perspective. Somebody else's conversation is a form of that perspective. And till you can enjoy that and ask yourself, why aren't you you? Or how can you be more of yourself? I think you're good.
Wonderful.
Mohit, you take the first question from the audience.
Yeah. So, yeah, Avinav, you can ask a question. You can
Yeah.
unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hi Mohit, hi Deepak. It's
Hey.
very nice listening to you. So, I had this question. We all talk about passion. We all talk about like if uh, when we say that once your work is your passion, you will never have to work another day of your life. But like, do you feel that everyone is able to find their passion in life? Because, like, for example, I'm a doctor. I'm like a resident right now, and I've been working inside. Like, we've been working continuously for the past 9, 8, 9 months because of COVID also. And I feel that like there are times like when they say again about your passion that you should like if you have that passion for helping others, you'll feel happier. But I've been finding it difficult because out of the 10 days I might feel happy on 2, but then there are 8 days where I feel completely dispassionate about what I'm doing. At times I feel sad at seeing what is happening around me. So do you feel that everyone has a passion and everyone does end up finding that passion?
Deepak,
I
before
do.
you answer, I would like to just comment on this thing. In your book itself, I read this phrase, ki follow your curiosity and not your passion. That was
Yeah.
about a week back. I read that, and I have in fact captured an article on that. That's so relevant in my life, at least. Over to you, Deepak, to just talk about what Avinav just asked here.
No, thank you for reminding me because I was going in that direction as well. And exactly what you said, I feel, Avinav, that your calling evolves over time. I say this in the book as well. People think that one day they will wake up and they will land up on that idea that is going to be their fulfillment and their purpose. Doesn't happen. I've been serving my calling for last 11 years. I mean, I discovered Project Fuel at age 14 and started teaching at 17. And I can still tell you there are days when I don't feel happy or contented with what I'm doing. I'm like, am I doing enough? I taught 4 lakh people, but have I taught enough? I also go through those moments of really self doubt, and in those moments, you build up to the next level. What I would say is two things. If you feel that you are not feeling fulfilled with what you're doing, how much are you willing to negotiate to try things that you can do? Are you doing them only 2 days a week? Are you doing them, like, for example, I loved writing songs and I didn't have a music background. My family was not in the music industry, so I would pick up a song every morning. I would take off the lyrics of it and I would put it in my own words in that tune. And that's how I taught myself to be a lyrics writer back in grade 10th in Dehradun, far away from Mumbai. I would My school bus, I mean, from my home to my school, the distance was an hour and a half, and it would play AIR FM Rainbow. And I would take the first song on the radio, for example, Pehla Nasha. And if you take the melody of Pehla Nasha, it is da-ra-ra-ra-ra, ta-ra-ra-ra-ra, ta-ra-ra-ra-ra, da-ra-ra-ra, ta-ra-ra-ra-ra, ta-ra-ra-ra-ra. And I would put my own words because I wanted to write songs so badly. I couldn't care if a, a producer hired me to write a song. So I wrote, दिल ने कहा दिल ने सुना जो था कहा सा अनकहा कह के भी जो ना सुना और सुन के जो ना कहा मेरे खुदा. This is in class 11th. And when I got my first film with Ketan Mehta, Mountain Man, Manji the Mountain Man, or when I wrote Atrangi Yari for Wazir for Mr. Bachchan and Farhan, I felt all I had to do was sit in that school bus, close my eyes, listen to the melody, and put words to it. So the bigger question is, what are you willing to negotiate in your current lifestyle? Because right now, the deliverable you have a perfectly successful system in place to produce the feeling you have. What will you change in that system to feel differently? And the other thing I would say is, don't be harsh on yourself. It's not that you will wake up one day and a career or a life of purpose would have presented itself. You create it, and sometimes it takes 10 years to get there, and sometimes it takes 2. And if you're willing to invest that time, I think you'll be further along in that journey. And also define. लक बाय चांस जो एक फिल्म है जोया अख्तर की, उसमें अंत में एक बड़ा खूबसूरत सा डायलॉग है, जावेद साहब ने लिखा है कि हर इंसान अपनी कामयाबी और नाकामयाबी खुद ही चुनता है. So if you don't feel successful, redefine what success means to you. Like, for example, I'm working on my next Hindi book, and my goal is to wake up 5 o'clock every morning. Now, some days, because we are in a Netflix and Amazon world, you watch a series and you binge watch it till 3 in the morning, and I miss my writing session. So I redefine what productivity for that day means. Maybe it means watching that show, not writing the book, and feeling great that you could find a content that you could watch. So I would say redefine as well happiness, and keep lowering the benchmark, keep raising it according to days. Don't set it and say, bas yahi hai. Because when you get there, you'll realize you'll feel more empty. I've spoken to some of the richest people in the world. I've spoken to some of the most influential people. They also feel the same crisis. They also feel the same emotion. So that's the good news. I hope that helps.
That does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mohit, who is the next?
So we have Gaurav Bhatnagar, I think. Megha,
Gaurav Bhatnagar is here.
Yeah, it's Gaurav's account, but it's me.
yeah. So Gaurav, you look different. Unmute. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mohit, you have to unmute me for this one. Thank you.
Okay, Megha, please.
Deepak, so nice to hear what you have to say. And I'm in the middle of reading your book. And I have so many questions to ask you. I don't think they can fit in here. But two things I want to say to you. One, that can you please send those 3,000 questions? Please. And the second is, I have to ask you the 51st question, which
Okay.
is, when and if you have a spouse and a child, would your answers change?
I hope they do. I really hope they do. I don't want to live a life where all my answers matched up exactly what they were at 21. Have played this game for so long with so many people, and their answers change within days. I asked them the question today, and 3 days later, an experience redefines what they feel about a particular question. And that is a great proof that you are evolving and you're growing and you're failing and you're succeeding. I hope the answer to certain questions remain the same, but not all 50. Uh, do you feel loved? I hope the answer is always yes. Are you okay? I hope the answer is always yes. But other questions on, how you want to be remembered, what do you most believe in? I hope those things change, because that is the only measure and barometer of understanding you are growing. So yes, people say to me all the time, I have many life lessons, and would one life lesson be enough for a lifetime? No. If you only have one life lesson for all your life, that's a life lived too little. So I encourage people to have multiple answers, and you always have the permission, the right to change your mind about anybody and any answer. You can, the only difficult part is to own up and say, you know what I told you last week? I don't believe in that anymore. I have been in rooms where I've said some of the most profound things, and I've met people next week and I said, you remember, I told you that thing? I don't believe that anymore. And they're like, how can you say that, right? Like, people heard you and people listen to you. I said, but they should know that I have the permission to change my mind. And I now know better. So I don't, kind of go into that mode.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mohit will let Abhilasha take the
Yeah.
next question.
Yes, please.
Tell. Hello.
Hi, Avilasha.
She's my daughter Radhika. She wants
Oh,
to ask
Radhika.
something.
All right. Hi, Radhika.
I'm 8 years old. Can you tell me the meaning of philosopher? I want to
Philosopher.
know.
Okay. So I think a philosopher really, Radhika, is someone who has a hypothesis. Hypothesis is basically this thing that you're planning or trying to prove. It's a guiding philosophy. So philosophers are people who have a philosophy. And philosophy can be anything. Everybody has a voice. Like, I believe everybody is wise irrespective of their age. So everybody is a philosopher in that context. Even you are, if you have one thing that you want people to truly believe in. Traditionally, philosophers are also people who ask tough questions and inquire. So if you ask your mother, why do I have to study so much? Can I do less homework and feel more accomplished? You are a philosopher, because you are aiming to find an answer that will change the system in which we live. So philosophers are people who ask questions, and hopefully better questions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
So
you
you have
so
to
much.
so you have to ask better questions, and because you are 8 years old, I would encourage you, when people ask you what do you want to be, what do you want to be when you grow up, I would say don't answer that question. Wait for them to frame that question better. Perhaps asking, Radhika, what problems would you like to solve when you grow up? And then answer it, because then you're making them better philosophers and not convenient ones. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Karthik Varadarajan. Uh,
Hi, can you hear me all?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Deepak, so wonderful sharing thought process. This entire whatever 1 hour has been worthwhile. My question to you is, we as beings, we have our aspirations and we have our failures, we have our stoppages in literally all the areas of our life. It could be career, it could be business, it could be relationship, or it could be something like your extracurricular activities, spirituality perhaps. I too have my own, and we know the aspirations, we know where we get stopped. uh, what according to you makes it tougher to cross the stoppages or the failures or the fears?
Karthik ji, that is a brilliant question. I would say I have an answer for it. It is the narrative you are telling yourself. I mean, it's the narrative we all tell. Like, if you ask somebody, with somebody down and say, tell me your story, their stories will be so clouded by what their boss said, what their ex-husband said, what the expectation of their children is, how the people in their circumstances respond. And then I asked them, if you had no pressure of saying how your father raised you, how your mother treated you, what somebody said to you, what is your story then? And the narrative is completely different. I think what people are not willing to do is change the narrative to what suits them now. We are telling ourselves the same stories, and those stories have stopped inspiring us about ourselves. I would tell, like, for example, the story of just, I think, having a voice that sounded like a girl and how I was bullied for it. I told that narrative so long growing up that I had no friends until I changed the narrative. And I used to say, you might think I sound like a girl or a kid, but I love my voice and I think it's amazing. And it really switched everything. And I'm not saying everything has to be loved and we have to go to extreme corners of saying everything we don't like ourselves, we have accepted it. I hope we get to that point. But the only blockage I see is the story you're telling about that thing. So, if you're saying, oh my God, I'm stuck in a really bad job, then the story is, I need this money. or my life is miserable because I'm in this job. Maybe you change the narrative and you say, you know what, the job sucks, but I need this money. Until I find something better, I'm doing this. Now that's a switch of the narrative, and it's an empowering narrative. So pausing every now and then whenever you feel a blockage and saying, what's the story I'm telling about this? And is that story empowering, or is it making me feel inferior? I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deepak, how much time do you have? 5-10 minutes more?
Yeah,
we have 2-3. Okay,
Sure.
perfect, great. So we have Dr. Suresh Sharma next up. He's a dear friend. Suresh uncle, good evening. You can unmute yourself, please.
You are listening?
Yes.
First of all, Mohit, you are a survivor. In the days of the bookstores are vanishing, you are doing the this lively chat and reviving, and it is like CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation in our terms. You are reviving the book world. Na? Deepak ji, I have to ask the one question. Are you happy with comfortable with Hindi also, Deepak ji?
जी, बिल्कुल. Whatever you feel like, sir.
Deepak ji, first I give compliment to you, and I see as a young monk, giving so many good things. लेकिन एक मैं ये सोचता हूँ कि आप when we talk ना, we give example and proverbs, quotations of so many people, Eliot, Hardy, this Fayan, and so many people I may not have heard their name. तो वो उनको ऐसा लगता है मैं थोड़ा inferior हूँ, तो वो सोच सकता है कि मैं थोड़ा सा, तो अपने इनको कुछ कम नाम देके ही अच्छी चीज को बताएं, तो वो कैसा आप महसूस करते हैं? क्योंकि जो इकिगाई का जो सेशन हुआ था, वो मोहित जी ने कराया था, उसमें स्वीडन के जो राइटर था ना, उसने लिखा था, बोला था कि जो राइटिंग सिंपल इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट.
Yes.
तो सिंपल से तो आप उसे किससे इससे वो एग्री या उसे वो रखते हैं आप?
जी.
जी.
थैंक यू सुरेश जी उस सवाल के लिए. मुझे लगता है कोटिंग पीपल शुड नॉट फील बैड, क्योंकि इसका मतलब है कि किसी की कही हुई जी हुई बात आपके दिल में इतना घर कर गई कि जितनी बातें 24 घंटे में हर रोज होती हैं, वो एक बात आपके जहन में आज भी है और आप उसे पास करना चाहते हैं. दूसरी बात ये है, not everybody is articulate enough to say the exact thing in 10 words. So when you borrow from literature, when you borrow from art, you give, तभी हम संगीत सुनते हैं ना, वरना हम क्या कहते हैं, अपने गाने खुद गाएंगे, अपने गीत खुद लिखेंगे, अपनी कविताएं खुद लिखेंगे, क्योंकि किसी ने हमारे जज्बातों को बयां करते हुए वो बात इतनी सटीक, इतने संक्षेप में कही है कि हमें लगता है ये तो मुझे कहना था. और मुझे लगता है जब हम उन बातों को रिपीट करते हैं, कहीं ना कहीं खुद को याद दिलाते हैं कि किसी ने हमारे जज्बातों को शब्द दिए थे, और शायद अब जो हम बात कहेंगे वो किसी और के लिए उस अग्रिम दिशा में वो काम करेंगी कि आपने जो शब्द कहे वो शायद किसी और की धारणाओं और अनुभवों को संक्षेप में बयान करते हैं। तो मुझे लगता है जो लोग रिड्यूस्ड फील करते हैं कि भाई, जैसे कई बार होता है, मैं तो बहुत कोट करता हूँ, आई रीड अ लॉट, और मुझे लगता है कि ये बात मैंने जो 4 पेजेस में कही वो माया एंजेलो ने 2 शब्दों में कह दी। इफ somebody feels reduced by it, अगर किसी को उससे छोटा महसूस होता है, तो I don't think so it is on you or me. It is on that person, because then they are comparing themselves to saying मुझे तो इतना याद नहीं रहता। तो बात का मूल तो वो भूल गए, बात की शक्ति और बात याद रखने की शक्ति पर वो अटक गए। क्योंकि मेन मुद्दा किसी को कोट करने का ये होता है कि सुनो, मैंने ये बात सुनी थी, क्या इस बात का तुम पर भी वही असर होता है जो मुझ पे हुआ था? मुद्दा ये नहीं है कि देखो मुझे 400 कविताएं याद हैं, क्या तुम्हें भी 400 कविताएं याद हैं? तो जब लोग अक्सर, मुझे लगता है, अपने आप को उस दृष्टिकोण से मापते हैं, तो वो मेन मुद्दे से बहुत दूर चले जाते हैं। और आखिरी बात मैं ये कहूंगा कि आर्ट कैन ओनली बी सेलिब्रेटेड इन द लिविंग। तो अगर आप कला के प्रेरक हैं तो आपको कला को जीना पड़ेगा, और कला को जीने का सबसे खूबसूरत तरीका है कि उसे आप अपने जीवन में, अपने शब्दों में, अपनी नॉर्मल बातचीत में यूं पिरोएं कि इट डज नॉट लुक लाइक कि आपने उस पर पैचवर्क किया है, वो रफू लगे। तो वो आपके शब्द नहीं है, पर आपको पता है कि आपने बाहर से बोरो करके उसको रफू किया है अपने ख्यालों में। सो मुझे तो बड़ा मजा आता है किसी और के, आज से 50 साल पहले मैं 1950s के क्यूरियस सैवेज वाले प्ले का वो कर रहा था, जॉन गॉर्डन्स, जिसे आज आई थिंक इट्स बीन what I would say 71 years since he died. बट जैसे ही मैंने उसका नाम लेकर, उनकी बात कहकर इस सेशन में उन्हें फिर से जिंदा किया, आई थिंक दैट इज एन ऑनर to somebody who lived 71 years ago and said something so powerful that a 29-year-old boy could use it when he wanted to answer something. So
दीपक, आपको इसी बात पर आपकी परमिशन से मैं एक एग्जांपल देना चाहूंगा सुरेश अंकल को। सर,
जी।
मैं जब 11वीं या 12वीं कक्षा में पढ़ता था, तो हमने दोस्त लोग के साथ ये फ्रेज जो मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले बोला कि यू नॉट ओनली टू बी लव बट टू बी टोल्ड दैट यू आर लव, मुझे काफी प्रभावित किया था, काफी ज्यादा प्रभावित किया था, और उसको मैंने अपने जीवन काल में बहुत अनुकूल इस्तेमाल भी किया है। मेरा हिंदी इतनी अच्छा नहीं है सर, लेकिन फिर भी कोशिश कर रहा हूँ मैं। अभी मैं जब भी ट्रैवल करता हूँ सर, दुनिया के कहीं भी कोने में, मैं वहां से पोस्ट कार्ड भेजता हूँ। मैं अपने दोस्तों का एड्रेस ले लेके उनको पोस्ट कार्ड भेजता हूँ, हैंड रिटन पोस्ट कार्ड भेजता हूँ उस कंट्री से। उससे ये हुआ, मेरा तो प्यार मैंने उनको दिखाया, और उसके बाद ये जो परंपरा मैंने चालू किया है, मेरे काफी दोस्त, मैं गिन सकता हूँ कि करीब 50-100 दोस्त जो है, ये परंपरा को फिर से उजागर किया और अपने प्यार को, मोहब्बत को इस पोस्ट कार्ड के द्वारा हमें हमारे पास पहुंचाए। तो मैसेज इज इंपॉर्टेंट रेदर देन द मैसेंजर, इस मेरा ये तजुर्बा, छोटा तजुर्बा दीपक के सामने मैं कहना चाहूंगा। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू।
Deepak, you also, thank you, Suresh Uncle. Deepak, you also mentioned something called unposted postcards in your book. If you could quickly, we'll just take 2 more questions. If you could quickly tell us about what that is entire idea and initiative was.
Oh yes, and actually सुरेश जी, आपके सवाल से भी जुड़ा हुआ है। कई बार मेरे इंस्टाग्राम पर लोग मुझसे आके कहते थे, दीपक जैसा आप लिखते हैं ना, हम नहीं लिख पा रहे हैं, so can you write for us? I want to tell my husband how much I love him. I want to tell my mother. And they said, can you make it more poetic? तो मेरे एक दोस्त हैं विभोर यादव, दिल्ली में बड़े अमेजिंग फोटोग्राफर हैं, और उनकी तस्वीरें ऐसी हैं कि आई फील वेरी इंस्पायर्ड। मैंने अपनी कई कविताएं उनकी तस्वीरों से प्रेरित होकर लिखी हैं। तो लोगों की इस रिक्वेस्ट को और विभोर की उस टैलेंट को कंबाइन करते हुए हमने एक इनिशिएटिव शुरू किया करीबन 1.5 साल पहले, जिसका नाम है अनपोस्टेड पोस्टकार्ड्स, जहां लोग आकर एक थीम, एक इंसान जिसके लिए वो कुछ लिखवाना चाहते हैं वो करते हैं, एंड इट्स एब्सोल्युटली फ्री। और विभोर एक तस्वीर चुनता है जो उस मैसेज से रिलेट होती है, और मैं एक छोटा सा 200-300 शब्दों का, कई बार 50 शब्दों का एक मैसेज लोगों के लिए ड्राफ्ट करता हूं। और आप विश्वास नहीं करेंगे, द पावर ऑफ दैट, I wish I can run data analytics someday on every request that has come in. The biggest insight is that people want to make other people feel loved. And even if they want to borrow the words of a Deepak Ramola or a picture of Vibhor Yadav, they're okay doing it, because the need to show their compassion, their kindness, their love to somebody else, or their encouragement, is far greater than their fear of their lack of, as they call, writing talent. So unposted postcards may, Mohit, people can literally send us. We open it in seasons because, I mean, as you know, there is so much time, deadlines and schedule challenges, but we do it in batches. And I think we're going to open the third season very soon. People write in a request ki meri mother ke liye please can you write a postcard, and we write a postcard for them. And it's a wonderful experience. I love offering my words. I mean, it's great to put it in a book, but imagine every day putting it in a postcard for a complete stranger on the internet, and making them feel loved with your skills and your talent.
We'll just take two more questions. And there's, I think, Girish who's asked a question. Girish, I've unmuted you. You may,
Yeah.
Girish Jain.
Hello. Hi, Deepak.
Hi, Girish.
So, what is more important in life, to write a poetry or live a poetic life first? I mean, I'm a struggling screenwriter living in Mumbai. I write character stories. They are adventurous, bold. They are making mistakes. Sometimes I get jealous, envious of my own characters, that I'm not doing all those mistakes. I'm not going on all those adventures and everything. So, what is more important, writing, expressing first on paper for other peoples to follow, or living that kind of life first?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing question. I think you can do both. I think it's not an either or situation, it's an and situation. You live a poetic life, but you also write poetry inspired from the lives of others. If you take my first Hindi poetry book, it's called Itna To Main Samajh Gaya Hu. And most poetry, as one of the critics wrote, is about love that could have been. And इतना दुख उस किताब में है प्यार को लेकर कि if I were to live all of that heartbreak myself, I would not be writing another book. So I'm glad I haven't gone through that much heartbreak. But I'm willing to borrow from the 4 lakh people I have spoken to and their heartbreaks. If you feel the need to live everything yourself and then be poetic, then you're being mechanical, then you're being limited, then you're being functional. But if you truly believe in poetry, हम कविताओं में क्या करते हैं, हम मेटाफर्स बोरो करते हैं, राइट? गुलजार साहब ने कहा कि क्या कहते हैं, तेरी बातों में केमाम की खुशबू है, तेरा आना भी गर्मियों की लू है. He is borrowing the metaphor of loo and केमाम की खुशबू. He's not saying कि तुम्हारा आना अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि तुम आती हो तो मैं बात कर पाता हूँ. He's not saying that. When a poet can borrow metaphors in his poetry or her poetry, we can borrow other people's lives to write about them because they are our metaphors. I can write about, I don't run a bookstore, but I wrote in this 50 toughest question an entire chapter on bookstore. I was telling Mohit that, I've written an entire chapter that bookstores are the most secular place in the world, because a Hindu book will be right next to a Muslim book and there is no problem because both of them have to sell. And if they want to reach their audience, an LGBTQ book will want to make peace in the same shelf with a staunch, straight, opinionated man or a race-induced man. So I don't think so I have to own a bookstore to feel that. And similarly, I don't have to go through all the lives of the characters that I am writing about. I hope to meet them. I hope I get to meet somebody who say I feel like, oh, that resembles my character. But that's the luxury of also fiction, right? Because as they say, all fiction is somewhere non-fiction in the world. आप कितनी भी विचित्र चीज लिख लीजिए, कोई ना कोई इंसान होगा दुनिया में जो उसके ट्रेट से मैच करता होगा. So you will discover them. Sometimes you preempt and write it and discover people. Sometimes you discover people and they become characters in that. And also, I would like to encourage you to not say you're a struggling screenwriter, because every time somebody says I'm a struggling this, I am compelled to ask them, so tell me about your struggles. If you say I'm a budding screenwriter in Mumbai, I would ask you what all are you working on. So maybe that could help, but just my suggestion. And thank you for that question.
Lovely.
We have so many people.
So should we do one or two last questions? Otherwise,
Right.
this would not
Right,
end today.
right. So I think Praveen, Kabir is asking, wanting to ask a question. Should I put him on this?
You need to go home, so better take his question. Then we'll ask Sandeep Rathi to take the last question for the day.
Correct.
After that.
So Deepak, Kabir is on. Kabir, you can ask your question.
So, Deepak uncle, I want to tell you something. I want not to ask you that Mohit Batra is my father.
Oh, wow. That is a discovery. Hi, Kabir. So nice to meet you.
All right, Kabir, thank you. God, do you have a question for Deepak, sir?
No.
No, all right,
Thank
wonderful. Great. So we'll just take one more question. We'll take it from Praveen. You can tell me the last question.
Sandeep Rathi is here. He was raised his hand. Sandeep, are you here? So I think he's not here. We'll move to Girish.
Yeah, Praveen, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you are audible. Yes.
Praveen, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Deepak. Good hearing you. So, my question to you is, can you elaborate more on move on and let go?
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're retracting to that entire conversation that we had about in any given situation, I think when you let go, you are finished in a way that you forget or erase and be done with that. I think when you move on, as I was mentioning earlier, you try to cultivate that and you take that into whatever the next thing you're doing. Both of the situations will arise in life in many ways and with many people. A lot of times people move on with the expectation that the other person will say sorry. I mean, after a breakup, right? You're like, my ex or my whoever has hurt me, this friend is going to come back to my life and apologize at some point. That is moving on with a certain expectation. Letting go can be empowering, and it can be like, I have let go of even that expectation. So I think the difference between letting go and moving on is, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel empowered? Do you want to feel informed? Do you want to feel
So I
The screen
think,
got frozen. There's a network issue.
yeah, this is a prime example of letting go and moving on. So he's back.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
He's back.
You're back. You're back.
So,
Yeah.
Deepak, I just want to add one thing. Let's say when you lose trust in someone, how you move on and how you forgive and how you move on.
But do
You
you
let
want
go.
to?
You let go, but I don't know. You let
Sandeep, I
go.
would
but
recommend you read the book. You'll get all the answers.
I have a whole chapter about trust.
Right.
That Sandeep ji, you will enjoy. What if love and trust switched roles in your life for one day? I have written so much about trust in the book because who once said to me, you trust again if your trust has been betrayed so many times. And he said, you be like the sun. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, if you are the person like the sun, on some days we open all our curtains, we take our clothes, and we soak in the sun and we're like, maza. And some days we close the curtains, we put on our shades and we say, kitni dhoop hai, kitni garmi hai. The sun doesn't change. It shows up every day. So if you have the think, as the monk suggested, you trust invariably, not in the same person or taking too much of a toll on you. Primarily yours if you feel compelled to let go of the honoring your trust again or moving on. But I think, yeah, as Mohit said, the book might help you provide a perspective as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Deepak. As much as we would want this to continue, I think you've already exhausted you for first thing in the morning with such an intense discussion. Thank you so much. It was lovely listening to you. And whenever you're back in India, you have to let either of us know. Either we meet in Hyderabad or in Jaipur, or we certainly do. Right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I hope everyone has got a copy of the book. And please make time to read this. I'm sure personally, all of you who've got the book have also got a note requesting you to read it. We are just trying to curate this atmosphere of getting together, discussing constructive things, meaningful conversations. But more importantly, what we have realized, and one lesson that I wanted to share that I have learned, which I have coined it for marketing purposes, a book is the smartest handheld device. The reason is very simple, that it helps us understand our own selves. Thank you. Praveen, you may say the concluding words, and then
Right. I mean, I'm very happy, Mohit, for recommending me this book and this wonderful person. I'm sure we are going to cross paths some way or other. I mean, I'm very happy that today we had this conversation with Deepak, and reading this book definitely had made me got clarity about a lot of facts about life. Follow your passion, follow your curiosity was one area which has really deeply moved me and is going to help me in the long run. I'm very happy about it. Deepak, whenever you are back to India in Hyderabad, love to meet you in person. And guys, if as I told earlier, if you like me, if you like this thing what we did today, please like us, follow us, and also spread the good words, because what I have seen in the world, a lot of paid news have been circulated, a lot of faulty news have been circulated, dirty news has been circulated, but goodness doesn't find its way because it's always gets suppressed. So goodness, good books, good conversation should be told to the world outside. I would love to hear from you. We are always available, myself and Mohit, and definitely we look forward for such meaningful conversation in the future as well. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and giving us your 1.5 hours of your life.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody who tuned in. You know, you picking up a book or signing up for a session that's called 50 Toughest Questions of Life already indicates that you're further along than most people into answering them. And I want to say a big thank you to you, Praveen, for putting this together and doing what you're doing and following your curiosity. And Mohit, to you for writing those handwritten letters, for putting inspiration into my heart for this book. And thank you for making me speak so passionately at 5:30 in the morning, until 7, I think, almost. But forward to meeting and bumping into all the people who were part of this session throughout life in some corner, and to you both in person. Thank you so much.
thank you, Deepak. One last thing I just wanted to mention to you. I've done almost 100 author sessions in the past couple of years. This is the first time I have my father and my son, both of them, tuned in to listen to you.
Yay! The whole Batra family. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. God bless. Love.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Take care, everyone.